Hello, I'm Nikmatul Faizah, and in this video, I will review one of a classic novel that I've already read that entitled Pride and Prejudice. So, without any further ado, let's check it out. Pride and Prejudice unfolds in the early 19th century English society, focusing on the life of Elizabeth Bennet and her journey through love and societal expectations. As one of five sisters, Elizabeth grapples with the pressure to marry well and secure her future in a society where social class is paramount. The novel intricately weaves themes of love, pride, and societal norms as Elizabeth navigates her feelings for the initially proud and enigmatic Mr. Darcy. The plot is rich with misunderstandings and the evolving dynamics of relationships, revealing the character's growth and transformation. Jane Austen's narrative is characterized by sharp societal commentary and wit, offering a keen observation of the rigid class structure and the consequences of preconceived judgments. Elizabeth's wit and intelligence stand out as she challenges societal expectations and refuses to conform to traditional gender roles. The novel not only explores the romantic entanglements of its characters but also serves as a nuanced exploration of the limitations and opportunities presented by the societal constraints of its time. Pride and Prejudice remains a timeless classic celebrated for its engaging narrative, memorable characters, and enduring themes that continue to resonate with readers across generations.
So first of all, let's talk about the author of this novel. So the author of this novel is Jane Austen. Jane Austen was an English novelist from Britain, known for her witty and social commentary in novels such as Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Emma. Her works explore themes of love, marriage, and social status in the early 19th century. Austen's novels remain widely read and adapted into various forms of media, showcasing her enduring influence on literature. So basically, this author of this novel is Jane Austen, that usually write about novel romance or about romantic novels. And in this video, I will review one of her best or her masterpiece novel or classic novel that entitled Pride and Prejudice. So the language of this novel basically written in English because the author itself was in British, so the original language of this novel was written in British English. And then times to read. I think I need 2 months to read this novel because I actually already read this novel before, and then I just have to reread this novel for a second time. So that's a little bit shorter than the first time I read this novel. Because I have to say that this novel is challenging because this is a classic novel and the vocabularies in this novel just difficult for me. So I need 2 months to reread this novel, even though I already read this novel before. It is also can be influenced by the pages of this novel also, because this novel has 500 pages more. So I need 2 months to reread this novel again. And then the themes of this novel. Let's talk about the themes. So the central themes of Pride and Prejudice revolve around pride, prejudice, love, class status, and personal growth. And we will explain it one by one. So first, theme of pride. So the novel basically explored the destructive nature of excessive pride, as seen in characters like Mr. Darcy. His initial arrogance and disdain for those he deems beneath him create misunderstandings and barriers to genuine connections. So the story emphasizes the importance of humility and self-awareness in relationships. That's why this novel can be categorized or have the theme of pride, because this theme, pride, can be seen in one of the male characters in this novel, that is Mr. Darcy, the main male protagonist in this novel. And then the second is Prejudice. So Prejudice, particularly societal and personal biases, is a pervasive theme. And then characters in this novel make judgments based on class and social standing, leading to misunderstandings and missed opportunities for connection. Overcoming prejudice is a crucial aspect of the character's development. So, in this novel, talk about prejudice between the characters in the novel, especially in the main protagonist in this novel, that's called Elizabeth Bennet, but it will explain in the next component. And then the third is love and marriage. So the novel examines the complexities of love and marriage in society where social class and financial considerations often take precedence over genuine affection. Characters like Elizabeth challenge societal expectations, seeking emotional compatibility over social norms. So in this novel, basically the main themes is about love and marriage. So in this novel, there is different perspective about the social expectation between Elizabeth and the other characters. So Elizabeth has principles that love must be appear in the relationship as marriage, but some people or some characters in this novel believe that love is not important as long as it can make the social status change to the high social status. There's no love in relationship. And then the fourth, social class. The rigid social hierarchy of the time plays a significant role. Class distinction influence characters' interactions and decisions about marriage. The novel critiques the limitations imposed by societal expectations and the consequences of marrying for status rather than love. So basically, it is a novel talking about social class that is really common in the 19th century era. That's why social class is the main problem in this novel, and it will explain about this social class in the next component. Now let's talk about the narrator. So the narrator of this novel basically using third point of view. Why Pride and Prejudice is narrated in the third person omniscient point of view? It's because the narrator has access to the thoughts and feelings of multiple characters, providing a comprehensive and insightful perspective on the events and interactions within the novel. This narrative choice allows Jane Austen, as the author, to offer commentary on the characters and society while maintaining a degree of narrative distance. So basically, why the narrator in this novel using third point of view, because the narrator is not from one of the characters in the novel, but it's from the other observer, not in the novel. And in this case, is Jane Austen itself as the author and also the narrator that know all of the things about event, interactions, or personality of the characters in the novel. Now talk about the genre of this novel, because as we said before that Jane Austen is an author that usually write a romantic novel. That's why genre of this Pride and Prejudice novel that we review also romance. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen is primarily classified as a novel of menace and a romantic novel. It falls within the broader genre of 19th century British literature. The novel of manners typically explores the social customs, values, and behaviors of a specific class of society. In Pride and Prejudice, Austen provides keen observations and satirical commentary on the manners and social norms of the English gentry during the Regency era. So this is romance that focus on the 19th century era. Basically, what is the perspective or the social expectation of the romantic relationship in that era.
So the first character of this novel is Elizabeth Bennet. She is protagonist in the story. She is the second eldest Bennet sister. She is intelligent, witty, and independent woman. She is strong-willed and not easily swayed by societal expectations. That's why Mr. Darcy is falling in love with her, because she has the personality that different from other women, and also about her cleverness. And she initially holds prejudice against Mr. Darcy, but is open-minded and undergoes significant personal growth. And then the second character is Mr. Darcy, or the nickname of him is Fitzwilliam Darcy, and he is the protagonist of the story. He is wealthy and initially proud gentleman. He is initially perceived as proud and aloof. He is intelligent, reserved, and principled, and he experienced personal the transformation and humility, especially in his feelings toward Elizabeth. And then the third character is Jane Bennet. She is a supporting character. She is sweet-natured, kind, and reserved. She is the eldest Bennet sister, known for her beauty and gentleness. She is often seen as an ideal match for Mr. Bingley. And then the fourth is Mr. Bingley. He is a supporting character. He is friendly, amiable, and affable. He is initially false for Jane Bennet and is easily influenced by others. That's why when Mr. Darcy gave him an advice to not marry Jane Bennet because of her social status, he's almost agree with that. But in the end, Mr. Darcy is the one who helped him to propose Jane Bennet and marry with her. He represents the more amiable side of the upper class. And then the fifth is Lydia Bennet. She is supporting character. She is flirtatious, impulsive, and lacking in discretion. She is the youngest Bennet sister. Her behavior creates tension in the family. She pursues a reckless relationship with Mr. Wickham. And then the sixth is Mr. Wickham. He is supporting character. He is charming, charismatic, but deceptive. He initially appears to be wronged by Mr. Darcy, but his true character is revealed later. So basically, he tried to make misunderstanding about Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, but then in the end, his true character is revealed, and then Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth can resolve their misunderstanding. And he engages in flirtations and elopes with Lydia Bennet. And the seventh is Mrs. Bennet. She is supporting character. She is nervous, frivolous, and obsessed with marrying off her daughters. She is often exaggerates and lacks social grace. And she represents the comedic aspect of the novel. And the sixth is Mr. Bennet. He is supporting character. He is sarcastic, witty, and somewhat detached from family affairs. He enjoys fair sparring with his wife, and he demonstrates a more rational and pragmatic approach compared to Mrs. Bennet. And then the ninth is Lady Catherine de Bourgh. I think she is an antagonist in this novel. She is arrogant, domineering, and condescending. She represents the aristocratic class and attempts to control the lives of those around her. And she is initially opposes the relationship between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. The 10th is Charlotte Lucas. She is supporting character. She is pragmatic, sensible, and realistic. She is Elizabeth's close friend who makes a practical decision in marrying Mr. Collins. She represents the societal pressures and practical consideration of marriage during that time. The 12th is Mr. Collins. He is supporting character. He is obsequious and pompous clergyman. His cousin of the Bennet sisters proposes to Elizabeth. And the 13th is Caroline Bingley. She is supporting character. She is a cunning and socially adept woman who manipulates situations to pursue Mr. Darcy. She serves as a foil to Elizabeth Bennet, highlighting differences in values and principles. The 14th is Mary Bennet. She is supporting character. Is portrayed as the middle sister of Bennet's sisters, known for her bookish and serious nature. She likes the vivacity of her younger sisters and is often seen playing the piano or reading. Mary is depicted as somewhat self-righteous and socially awkward. And then the 15th is Catherine, or Kitty Bennet. She is supporting character. She is the fourth sister. In the novel, Kitty is frequently overshadowed by her younger and more outgoing sister, Lydia. Kitty tends to follow Lydia's lead and is influenced by her behavior. Unlike Mary, Kitty's character is not as prominently featured in the story. And then the 11th, or the last, is Mrs. House. She is a minor character. She is fashionable and indolent sister of Mr. Bingley, and she is a minor character and part of Mr. Bingley's social circle.
So this novel basically using chronological plot. Pride and Prejudice novel follows a predominantly chronological plot structure. The events in the novel unfold in a linear fashion, presenting the progression of the characters' lives and relationships over time. The narrative is organized in a sequential manner, allowing readers to follow the unfolding story in the order in which events occur. While there may be some in retrospection and reflection, an overall structure adheres to a chronological timeline. So basically, this novel using chronological plot, and it's starting from the beginning until the end, and it's chronologic. That's why this plot can be categorized as chronological plot.
First is Longbourn. This is the place when introduction of the Bennet family, including Mr. and Mrs. Bennet and also the Bennet sisters, and displays arrival of Mr. Bingley in the neighborhood, and displays also the initial ball where Mr. Darcy's reserved behavior is observed. And then the second is Netherfield Park. These are the scenes where Mr. Bingley leases Netherfield Park, sparking excitement. And the ball at Netherfield where Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth have their first notable encounter. And then the third is Meryton. The scenes in this place, the Meryton Assembly, where social interactions set the stage for various relationships, including Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, also with the other characters, and displays the continued socializing and interactions between characters. fourth is Rosings Park. This is a place, the scenes of Elizabeth's visit to Rosings, where Lady Catherine de Bourgh makes her disapproval of Elizabeth known. And this is the place, the unexpected meeting between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy at Rosings. And then the fifth, Hunsford. There is the place when Elizabeth stays at the parsonage where Mr. Collins resides. And this is the place when Mr. Darcy's unexpected appearance and the subsequent conversations between Elizabeth and Mrs. Darcy. And then the sixth is Apollo Temple. This is the place where Mr. Darcy confessed his feeling for the first time to Elizabeth. But then Elizabeth refuses Mr. Darcy in this place. And then the seventh is Pemberley. There is a scene when Elizabeth visits to Pemberley with her aunt and uncle. The revelation of Mr. Darcy's character through his estate and interactions also happen in this place, at Pemberley. And then the eighth is London. The scenes in this place, Lydia's elopement with Mr. Wickham and the subsequent crisis that affects the Bennet family. And then the ninth, various houses and estates in the novel. There are scenes at the gardener's home during Elizabeth's visit to Derbyshire, and the interactions at the homes of various minor characters that contribute to the unfolding plot.
First of all, of course, social class barriers. The problem is the rigid social class structure limits individuals' choices in marriage, often prioritizing financial stability over genuine love. The impact of this problem, characters like Elizabeth face the challenge of reconciling personal desires with societal expectation, creating internal and external conflicts. And the resolution of this problem, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy overcome societal expectations, choosing love over class differences. The eventual marriage challenges and transcends the limitations imposed by social norms. So, the social class is the main problem in this novel. Because in this novel, a poor family that has many daughters have to marry with a rich man to get or to change the social status to be higher than before. That's why in this novel, social expectations or social class barriers is the main problem. Now let's talk about the misunderstandings. So the problem is lack of clear communication, and misunderstandings lead to false perceptions affecting relationships. So the impact of this problem, the misinterpretation of Mr. Darcy's actions by Elizabeth and vice versa, contributes to tension and impedes the natural course of the developing relationship. And then the resolution of this problem through open communication and reflection, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy clarify their feelings and dispel misunderstandings. This leads to mutual understanding and the development of a genuine connection. So basically, there is misunderstanding between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. So as we know that Elizabeth go to Hunsford, and then in Hunsford, Elizabeth visit Mr. Colin and Charlotte Lucas, and then Elizabeth go to Lady Catherine Resilience, and then she meets with Mr. Darcy by accident in there, and then in the they go to Mr. Collins' speech, but then the god tell Elizabeth that Mr. Bingley just go from Netherfield from Netherfield. That's because of the persuasion of Mr. Darcy. So basically, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley is a friend, and then Mr. Bingley tried to marry with Jane Bennet, or the older sister of Elizabeth, but Mr. Darcy persuaded Mr. Bingley to not marrying Jane Bennet because Mr. Darcy has prejudice that Jane Bennet and their family, except Elizabeth, just marry for social status. They just wants to reach higher status than their status before, or their status right now. And then because of hearing that, Elizabeth just feels so angry. And then when Mr. Darcy confessed his feeling in the Apollo temple to Elizabeth, that he is in love with Elizabeth because of her cleverness, even though she is poor. And then Elizabeth just feels so angry, and she said that even though in this world you are the only man that I can marry, I will not marry you because you just ruined my old sister love story with Mr. Bingley. Because of Mr. Darcy persuade or given advice to Mr. Bingley, and then he spirited Mr. Bingley and Jane Bennet. So Elizabeth thinks about that. So she thinks that Mr. Darcy is a bad person and also an arrogant person, and always try to disrespect her family because of their lower social status. That's why there's misunderstanding between them. And then Elizabeth refuses Mr. Darcy because of that. But in the resolution, through open communication and reflection, and then Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy will clarify their feelings, and they will understand each other and resolve their misunderstandings. And then the third is Pride and Prejudice. So the problem is characters' pride and preconceived notions create barriers to understanding and connection. The impact of it, Mr. Darcy's initial arrogance and Elizabeth's prejudice against him hindered the development of the relationship, requiring personal growth to overcome these obstacles. And the resolution of this problem, both Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy undergo significant personal growth. Mr. Darcy learns humility and Elizabeth overcomes her prejudices. The evolving characters allow them to move beyond pride and prejudice, fostering a deeper connection. And that's why, because of Mr. Darcy's pride and Elizabeth's prejudice, it can hinder their relationship and it make them far away. And then after that, there is some scene or some events that happen that will explain and resolve their misunderstanding as before, and Mr. Darcy will overcoming and try to learn about humility, and then Elizabeth will change her prejudice to Mr. Darcy. And then the fourth is family pressures. So the problem is financial strain and the pressure to marry well create dilemmas for the Bennet sisters. The impact of this problem, the urgency to secure advantageous marriages poses challenges for the characters, influencing their decisions and relationships. And the resolution of this problem involves individual choices that prioritize genuine happiness over societal expectations. For example, Elizabeth's decision to marry Mr. Darcy is based on love rather than financial considerations. So, as we know that in this novel, basically common problem based on social expectations to marry someone that richer than them and to have a better life, a better future, marry well, like that. Even though they don't love each other, they still marry because they want that status. That's why I think one of the scenes that show this problem is when Mr. Collins tried to force Elizabeth to marry him. So basically, Mr. Collins is the heir of Bennet's family, and then Lady Catherine, as his boss, give him a choice and give him a position, a good position actually, that can make him have a better life. But Mr. Collins have to marry with one of the sisters of Bennet, and then actually Mr. Collins choose Jane Bennet to marry with, but Mrs. Bennet say that Jane Bennet already wants to marry with Mr. Bingley, so that Mr. Collins cannot marry with Jane Bennet, even though Jane Bennet is the most beautiful Bennet sisters. And then after that, Mrs. Bennet tried to persuade Mr. Collins to choose Elizabeth, and then Mr. Collins agreed with that and tried to propose Elizabeth to marry with him. But Elizabeth, as we know that, she has a principle to not marry with someone that she doesn't love. That's why she refuses Mr. Collins' proposal. And then Mr. Collins just try to force Elizabeth, try to convince Elizabeth, because it's because of social status. Like, if she wants to marry with him, she will have a home, she will have a better life, she will have suitable life and stable life. And then after that, even though Mr. Collins already tried to persuade Elizabeth still refuses Mr. Collins' proposal, because as we know that Elizabeth tried to have a different perception of marriage, because she wants to marry with someone that she loves. That's why the resolution of that problem, finally, Elizabeth prioritized genuine happiness over social expectations, and she refuses Mr. Collins' proposal. And then, in the end, Elizabeth married with Mr. Darcy, because she is in love with him, and not just because of social expectations. It's because they all fall in love with each other. And then the 5 romantic entanglements. So the problem is complex romantic entanglements lead to emotional turmoil and societal expectations. The impact of this problem, the intertwining relationships of the characters create dilemmas and choices that affect their happiness and well-being. And the resolution of this problem comes through characters making choices aligned with their true feelings. Marriages are based on genuine affection, and characters find happiness by following their hearts rather than adhering to social expectations. So Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth is the example of this kind of romantic entanglements. So basically, they try to just avoid what social norms or society opinions about marriage, that marriage is just for social status. They try to avoid that. They try to find happiness and just align with their true feelings. That's why they don't even care about social barriers, and then they choose it. They are fall in love with each other, and they are married because they love each other, not because of societal expectations, like all the characters in this novel. And then marriage, a social contract. So the problem is the societal view of marriage as a contract rather than a union of love and compatibility. The impact is characters must navigate the societal pressure to conform to traditional expectations, raising questions about the authenticity and fulfillment of their marriages. The resolution of this problem, the resolution involves characters rejecting a societal pressure and marrying for love. Elizabeth's marriage to Mr. Darcy exemplifies the terms of personal happiness of societal expectations. So one of the cases of social marriage for social contract is Charlotte Lucas. So Charlotte Lucas is the best friend of Elizabeth Bennet. As we know that Elizabeth actually refuses Mr. Collins' proposal, and then Mr. Collins tried to search for another girl to be married with, and then Mr. Collins chose Charlotte Lucas, and Charlotte accepted. So when Elizabeth asked about it to her best friend Charlotte said that it's not her business, because Charlotte wants to marry with Mr. Collins not because of love, but because she just wants to stable life and a home and a safe future, because she married with a man that have a higher social status than her. That's why Charlotte and her is the example of marriage as social contract. But in the resolution, Elizabeth refuses Mr. Collins, right? And then Mr. Collins tried to force her, but it's not worth it. It's not work. And then after that, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth is the example in the other case that they're not marriage as social contract, but their marriage because of love, and choose their personal happiness over societal expectations. And then the last, maybe 7 external influences. So the problem is external figures like Lady Catherine de Bourgh interfere in characters' lives and decisions. The impact is the influence of external forces adds complications to the characters' journeys, forcing them to confront challenges beyond their personal relationships. And the resolution of this problem, characters resist external influences, asserting their autonomy in making crucial life decisions. Mr. Darcy's rejection of Lady Catherine de Bourgh's interference is a significant example of this resolution. So the external influences is from Lady Catherine actually. So basically, as I said before, that Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy meet by accident in Lady Catherine de Bourgh estate or residence, and then Lady Catherine actually tried to marrying her children with Mr. Darcy, but Mr. Darcy rejects it because he's already fallen in love with Elizabeth Bennet. And then after that, Lady Catherine tried to force Elizabeth to just know her place because of her social status that lower than Mr. Darcy. That's why Lady Catherine tried to force Elizabeth to review this Mr. Darcy proposal if Mr. Darcy really proposed her to be his wife. But then Elizabeth tried to avoid it and just don't care about about Lady Catherine orders, because Elizabeth wants to decide by herself if Mr. Darcy really proposed her. That's why in the end of this novel, actually Mr. Darcy proposed Elizabeth and asked her to marry with him, and Elizabeth accepted. That's why in the end, so I think external influences by Lady Catherine is not work with Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy that already clarify their feelings and already know themselves by each other and fall in love with each other. Now let's talk about the mood when I read this story. So I feel amusement and delightful at the same time. The humor and wit in this novel often evoke a sense of amusement and delight for me. And I really like the clever dialogue, social satire, and the comedic elements present in the interactions among the characters in the story. This is one of the examples of the sentences that really interesting for me. And then I feel romantic excitement when I read the story. As the romantic tension between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy unfolds, I feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. The development of the relationship and the moments of connection can evoke romantic emotion between them. That's why I think like their interaction is unique and also so sweet. It's not, it's not hyperbole, but still it can make us blushing. Let's talk about the moral values that I get after I read the story. So first of all, prejudice and open-mindedness. I learned to control our prejudice and don't believe about our prejudice, because sometimes our prejudice is just our prejudice, not the reality of what or other people's characters. For the example, Elizabeth has a bad prejudice to Mr. Darcy. She thinks that Mr. Darcy is a bad person and an arrogant person. But actually, Mr. Darcy is a good person and a gentleman. And in the end, Elizabeth knows about it. And I also want to relate with this one, because sometimes I have prejudice to some people that I think like, oh, they're a bad person, they like that, they like it. But actually, that's not the real of them. Like it's just our prejudice, not the real of them. So we cannot just believe in our prejudice. Yeah, it can be considered, but still we have to control our prejudice, because sometimes our prejudice is not the reality of someone's characters, personality, or life. And then open-mindedness. I think we have to be open-minded about other people's opinions or decisions that maybe not same with us. As the example in the story, Mrs. Bennet and Mr. Bennet have different mindset. First, Mrs. Bennet tried to force Elizabeth to marry with Mr. Collins for their social status, even though Elizabeth said that she doesn't want to marry with Mr. Collins because she doesn't love Mr. Collins. But Mrs. Bennet still tried to force her, don't care about her opinion about the marriage. But Mr. Collins is the otherwise, that Mr. Collins is care about her. Mr. Collins is care about Elizabeth. Like when Elizabeth says that she doesn't want to marry with Mr. Collins, her dad or Mr. Collins, her dad or Mr. Bennet actually agree with that and can accept Elizabeth's opinions or decisions without forcing her too much. So that's why I think Mr. Bennet is the character that can be categorized as open-minded characters, but Mrs. Bennet is the otherwise. So she's just like a close-minded person that don't want to accept other people's differences. And then importance of love over class. It is really clear to see in this novel, because sometimes we don't have to just marry with someone just because they are rich, or maybe because we want to change our social status to be better than before. But of course, there is also a love in the relationship, because me too, I also thought, because I think I cannot find happiness if I just marry with someone just because to fit with social expectations, not because I love that person. So I cannot imagine it. I think, how can I will find happiness if I just wants to fit with social expectations in my surroundings? Like, sometimes we have to choose love over class, but still in this reality it's better if we balance between them. And then social critic. The social critic in this novel is explained by the author. Actually, Jane Austen really critiques the social norms or social expectations in the 19th century era by her satirical sentences. But I think it's related with this era also, because sometimes we marry someone, or we always thinking about others people's opinion, then we sacrifice our happiness because we want to fit other people's happiness or expectations. Sometimes when people say, oh, I think it's good for you, but we think that that's not good for us, but we still have to follow them because we want to fit with their expectations. That's what society usually talk about. Like, usually we have to fit the society, even though we don't think that society is good for us, is right for us. That's why I think we have to always prioritize our happiness over people's opinion. Like, we don't have to always care about their opinions, because sometimes it's not better for us, because we are the one that know what's better for us, not other people's opinion. It's okay to search for an advice from them, but just think about our happiness, not just to fit social expectation, social opinions, or other people's definition of happiness, because sometimes we have different definitions, so we don't have to always fit with them. We just have to prioritize our happiness, our needs, more than others people opinion, others people critics, social critics. That's why I think that's what I learned from this novel.
So I don't think there is a good speech to describe this novel, because this novel is really good. It's a classic novel that explores themes like love, personal growth, and societal expectations, and the characters are so well developed, and you can't help but get invested in their journeys, especially the evolving relationship between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. So I think Jane Austen's wit and humor add a delightful layer to the story, making it both entertaining and thought-provoking. Even though it's set in the 19th century, the themes are surprisingly relevant today. So if you enjoy well and crafted prose, engaging characters, and a mix of romance and social commentary, I highly recommend giving Pride and Prejudice as a read, because it's a classic that has stood the test of time for a reason. So that's all my review and analysis about the components of Pride and Prejudice novel. I hope it's helpful and quite detailed, and I thank you for the attention until the end, and thank you for watching.